He rescued her from her old life, only to lock her into a new one. Welcome to the story. In their perfect home, she was the perfect wife. But when the lights went out, she was his property. He didn't just want her love, he wanted her obedience. He owned her thoughts. He controlled her breath. And in the suffocating dark, his affection was a chilling reminder of who she belonged to, body and soul. His forgiveness was a violation. His love was a cage. But this perfect, broken doll had a secret. She had a plan. This story contains intense, mature themes of psychological and intimate control. Smash that like button and subscribe right now, if you're ready to unlock the door to this house of horrors. This is wonderful, Veronica. You've truly outdone yourself. Veronica heard the words from a distance, though the man, Mark, was standing very close. She produced a sound of polite acknowledgement, a small laugh that felt thin and brittle in her own throat. Thank you, Mark. I'm just so glad you could all make it. The words were smooth, practiced. She had said them many times before. She had said them all evening. A hand landed on her waist. It was not a gentle touch. It was a heavy, anchoring pressure. My Veronica, Eric said. His voice was loud, a performance for his colleagues. She's incredible, isn't she? Takes care of everything. Takes care of me. The small group of guests laughed, a polite, appreciative sound that made Veronica's skin crawl. You're a lucky man, Eric, Mark said, lifting his glass in a small toast. Oh, I know it, Eric replied. His fingers pressed into the fabric at her waist, a silent, sharp punctuation. Mine. Veronica kept the smile attached to her face. It felt like a rigid, heavy mask, and she worried that if she relaxed for even a second, it would fall off and shatter on the floor, revealing whatever was underneath. She was an expert at this, the perfect hostess, the adoring partner, the woman who had everything. Her gaze flickered, a nervous, searching movement. She had to find him, just to check. She spotted him. Leo. Eric's son, Leo, was present but not participating. He was 18 years old, a man in age, but he held himself with a crushing stillness that was unnatural. He was at the edge of the interaction, watching. He was always watching. He never seemed to eat much at these events, never spoke unless spoken to. And even then, his answers were clipped, monosyllabic, and respectful. Their eyes met, just for a fraction of a second. It was not a greeting. It was a flash of shared understanding, a mutual, silent terror that passed between them in the space of a heartbeat. Leo looked away instantly, his focus dropping, as if the eye contact itself was a dangerous transgression. Eric, unaware, laughed loudly at something one of his colleagues said. The sudden sound made Leo flinch, a tiny, barely perceptible movement of his shoulders. Veronica was the only one who saw it. She was conditioned to see it. The rest of the evening passed in a similar blur of practiced words and empty gestures. Finally, the sounds of departure began. Thank you again, Veronica. It was perfect. Good night, Eric. Great to see you. Get home safe, Veronica said, her voice bright and false, her smile aching from exertion. The front door closed. The sound of the lock clicking into place was deafening. This was the worst part. The silence, the immediate, suffocating quiet that descended the moment the performance was over. Veronica began to move, a mechanical motion. She started gathering the empty glasses, her hands needing a task, needing to do something other than tremble. Leave it, Eric said. His voice was different. The warmth, the booming charm he used for his guests, was gone. It was flat, cold. She stopped. Her hand hovered over a glass. She did not turn to face him. She did not need to. You seemed very friendly with Mark tonight, he said. It was not a question. Here it is. Her heart did not race. It just sank, a heavy, familiar stone dropping into her stomach. He's your colleague, Eric, she said, her voice quiet. I was being polite. Polite. He repeated the word, tasting it. You were leaning in. You were laughing at everything he said. Did you enjoy his attention, Veronica? Did it make you feel special? No. I was just being a host. He was looking at you, Eric said. She heard his movement, the sound of his shoes on the floor as he stepped closer. She could feel his proximity without looking. He was looking at what is mine. Eric, please. He's married. It was nothing. It was something, he whispered. The word was sharp, a jab in the silent room. You encouraged it. You don't appreciate what you have. You're always looking, aren't you? She said nothing. She knew better than to argue. Denial was proof of guilt. Silence was. Sometimes, silence was just silence. She closed her eyes. Don't argue. Don't cry. Don't give him the reaction. He sighed. It was a long, theatrical sound of profound disappointment. He stepped in front of her, and she was forced to open her eyes. He touched her face. She flinched. Shh, he said, his tone shifting, becoming sickeningly gentle. It's okay. I know you can't help it. You get confused. His hand was on her cheek, his thumb tracing the bone. It's my fault. I put too much pressure on you. I shouldn't have invited people. I know you're delicate. This was the twist. The sharp, dizzying turn. Now it was her fault, and his for being too good to her, too forgiving. I forgive you, baby, he whispered. I always forgive you. He pulled her against him. It was not a hug. It was an act of possession, an act of absorption. It was suffocating. She felt her muscles lock, her body rigid against his. He was forgiving her. His hold was tight, a physical assertion of his control, a reminder of his strength. He began to guide her backward, moving her from the room. Let's go, he murmured against her hair. You can show me how sorry you are. You can remind me why I keep you. This was the price of the performance. This was the cage. As he moved her, her gaze darted one last time toward the empty hallway where Leo had vanished hours before. The house was utterly silent, except for their footsteps. His touch was a brand, a heavy, unyielding claim in the suffocating quiet of the house. Veronica had learned long ago to separate her mind from her body. It was a skill born of necessity, a mental trick of survival. As Eric's forgiveness continued, a cold, proprietary act that had nothing to do with absolution, she let her thoughts drift. She forced them backward. She needed to remember the beginning. She had to trace the path from then to now, to understand how the warmth had become this cold, how the savior had become the jailer. It had been 7 years. That felt like a lifetime. Another lifetime belonging to another woman. When she met him, she had been vulnerable. That was the word he had used, but he'd said it with such tenderness. You're so strong, but you're so vulnerable, he had murmured, as if it were a beautiful, precious secret only he could see. In reality, she had been in trouble. A sudden, catastrophic financial collapse not of her making. A family member's debts had become her own, and she was drowning. She was working 2 jobs and still sinking, the panic a constant, metallic taste in her mouth. Then there was Eric. He wasn't just charming. Charm was a pale, weak word for what he was. He was a force. He was a solution. He didn't just listen to her problems, he absorbed them. He was angry for her. He was indignant on her behalf. This is unacceptable, he had said, his voice a low, protective rumble, after she had confessed her situation, the numbers tumbling out of her in a rush of shame. You will not be treated this way. Not while I'm here. 2 days later, it was done. The debt was gone. He had handled it. When she cried, overwhelmed with a gratitude that felt as vast and deep as the ocean, he had simply held her. It's just money, Veronica, he'd said, brushing the hair from her face. It's nothing. You are what's important. Seeing you free, seeing you safe. That's all I care about. She had believed him. She had fallen into his protection like a woman dying of thirst falling into water. The weeks that followed were a blur. It was not a romance, it was a whirlwind. He made her the absolute center of his world. He wanted to know everything she thought, where she was, who she was with. At the time, she mistook his intensity for profound passion. He wanted to be with her every moment. He said it was because he couldn't bear to be apart from her. He made her feel cherished. He made her feel seen. He saved her. The first crack in the porcelain was so small she had dismissed it almost immediately. They had been together for perhaps 3 months. She was walking with him, her hand in his, feeling secure, feeling adored. Then, a voice called her name. Veronica, is that you? It was Michael. An old friend from her university days, a kind, funny man she hadn't seen in years. The conversation was innocent, a happy, breathless exchange of what have you been doing, and it's so good to see you. Eric had stood beside her, silent. He did not participate, he simply watched. His presence was a cold weight. Michael, sensing the shift, had ended the conversation quickly. "It was great seeing you," he'd said, his smile fading. In the car, Eric said nothing. He did not turn on the radio. He just drove. The silence was not peaceful. It was heavy. It was a physical thing, pressing in on her from all sides. "Are you all right?" she had finally asked, her voice small. He had waited a long time to answer. "I'm just disappointed," he'd said. "Disappointed? In what?" "I thought you were different," he said, his eyes on the road. "I thought you were serious. About us." "I am," she said, confused and alarmed. "Michael is just an old friend." "The way you looked at him," Eric said, his voice quiet, full of a terrible, wounded sadness. "The way you lit up. You don't. You don't look at me that way." "That's not true. He's just a friend." "He's a man, Veronica, a man from your past, and you were laughing like you had secrets. It was disrespectful. To me, to what we have." She found herself apologizing. She found herself reassuring him, promising him that Michael meant nothing, that he was her entire world. She felt ashamed. She felt guilty, though she had done nothing wrong. To avoid that cold, hollow feeling, that awful, bottomless disappointment, she stopped answering messages from Michael, then from other friends. It was easier to just let those connections fade, to keep Eric happy. His happiness was her safety. His peace was her peace. She snapped back to the present. To the darkness of the room, to the weight of his body, the reality of his forgiveness. The realization was as cold and as sharp as a shard of glass. The man from 7 years ago was not a different person. He was the same man. The rescue was not a rescue. It was an acquisition. The debt she thought he had cleared was still there. It had just changed forms. He had saved her, and she had been paying for that salvation every single day since. Every act of generosity, every display of protection, was just another hook. Another meticulously placed link in the chain he had been fastening around her, so slowly and so gently that she had not even felt it until she was no longer able to move. The 12 hours of hell did not begin with a shout. They began, as so many things did, with a sound. It was the next evening. The party, the feigned smiles, and the violation of his forgiveness had left a heavy, toxic residue in the air. The silence in the house was a living thing, a predator waiting. Eric had been brooding, moving from room to room with a restless energy that kept Veronica's nerves stretched tight, like a wire humming with a current it could not discharge. She was sitting, pretending to read a book she had held for an hour without turning a page. Her phone was on the small table beside her, an object she had retrieved earlier with a sense of defiance that now felt foolish. It buzzed. The sound was small, a simple vibration on a hard surface, but in the oppressive quiet, it sounded as loud as a gunshot. Veronica's heart leaped into her throat. She did not move. She did not breathe. She prayed he had not heard it. "Who is that?" His voice came from the doorway, flat and immediate. He had heard it. "It's nothing," she said, her voice too quick. "Probably just a work email. I thought you were off this evening. I thought this evening was for us." "It is. I forgot to turn off the notifications." The phone buzzed again. A follow-up message. "It seems very insistent," Eric said. He walked into her line of sight. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the phone. "Let me see it." "Eric, please. It's just my phone." "I know what it is," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "I want to know who is contacting you. At this hour, when you are supposed to be with me." A cold dread, familiar and sharp, settled over her. This was a test. Every moment was a test. "It's just Sarah. From accounting. We were talking about a recipe last night." His eyes flickered. "Sarah. The one you were laughing with. The one you were whispering with." "We weren't whispering. We were just talking. If it is just Sarah, then you will have no problem showing me. Or are you keeping secrets again, Veronica?" She knew this trap. To refuse was an admission of guilt. To comply was to surrender another piece of herself. But refusal was the more dangerous path. Her hand was shaking as she picked up the phone. She did not even look at the screen. She just held it out to him. He took it. His movements were slow, deliberate. He read the screen. She watched his face. It was a mask, but she could see the subtle tightening around his jaw, the way his stillness became a threat. "So," he said, his voice a low, cold vibration, "you are a great host. She had a great time. You and Sarah are now best friends. She's just being nice, Eric, that's all. Is that what she's doing? He asked. Or is she telling you things? Putting ideas in your head? Is that what you were talking about by the kitchen? Were you talking about me? Were you complaining about me to just Sarah? What? No, never. We were talking about a dip. It's insane for you to think that. Insane. He repeated the word as if he had never heard it before. You think I'm insane? You're the one lying to me. You're the one plotting, hiding things. You're building your little army, aren't you? First Mark, now Sarah. Who's next? There is no army. There is no plot, she said, her voice rising, a note of hysteria creeping in. You are twisting everything. You're sick, Veronica, he said. And his voice was suddenly soft, filled with a terrible, false pity. You're getting paranoid. You can't see the truth. These people aren't your friends. They're a danger. To you, to us. He pressed a button, and the screen went dark. He did not hand the phone back. He slipped it into his own pocket. What? What are you doing? I'm protecting you, he said. You need a break from all this noise. From these people who are trying to confuse you. He held out his hand. His other hand? Your keys. Her blood went cold. My keys. Why? I have to. I have to go to the store tomorrow. For Leo. I'll go to the store. Leo will be fine. You're too agitated to drive. You might get hurt. Give me your keys. Numbly, she did. The small, metallic sound they made as he took them from her palm was the sound of a door locking. And your wallet. This was it, the final turn of the key. Eric, no. Please, that's mine. It has my identification. I need it. His face darkened, the brief, false pity gone, replaced by a cold, hard suspicion. Why? Why do you need it so badly? Are you planning on going somewhere, Veronica? Were you and Sarah planning a little trip? No, I just... Then it is not a problem, he said, his voice smooth again. I will keep it safe for you. You don't need to worry about anything. I am taking care of you. He had it all. Her phone, her keys, her identity, he had her. She stood up, a panicked, desperate need to move, to get away from him, to just be in another part of the house. She took a step toward the hallway. He moved with her. He did not touch her, but he stepped into her path, a solid, unmoving object. Where are you going? He asked, his voice still gentle. I was just going to the kitchen, to get some water. I'll get you water. You've had a shock. You should sit down. You should rest. I'm taking care of everything now. He was not pushing her. He was not pulling her. He was hurting her. He used his body, his presence, to block her path, to gently, inexorably guide her backward, back to the sofa she had just left. He was not confining her to the house. He was confining her to a single cushion. She sank down, her body trembling with a mixture of terror and rage that had no outlet. That's better, he said, standing over her, a shadow in her own home. You just rest. You'll feel better in the morning, I promise. He smiled. A thin, tight smile of absolute possession. There was no sleep. Sleep was a privilege. And she had forfeited it. Eric did not sit. He prowled. He spent hours circling the room where she sat, a silent statue of terror, on the edge of the sofa. He talked. The words were a torrent, a relentless, looping monologue of her failures. She was ungrateful. She was disrespectful. She was stupid to think she could hide things from him. He had given her everything, and she, in her weakness, was trying to undermine him. He would stop, his voice would drop to a whisper, and he would demand she recite the things he had done for her. Tell me, he would hiss, leaning in so close she could feel the heat of his words. Tell me who saved you. You did, she would whisper, her voice wooden. Tell me who keeps you safe. You do. And what are you? I am grateful. Liar, he would snap, and the cycle would begin again. The rage, then the coldness, then the wounded disappointment, then the rage again. At some point, he stood in front of her. I have to use the bathroom, he announced. She said nothing. She just stared at a spot on the floor. I said, I have to use the bathroom, he repeated, louder. She flinched. Okay. You are not listening. Are you being disrespectful again? He sighed, a sound of profound theatrical patience. I am going. You are coming with me. What? Why? Eric, no. Why? He asked, as if the question were absurd. Because I cannot trust you. What if you try to run? What if you try to find a weapon? You are not well, Veronica. I have to watch you. Now, come. He did not pull her. He simply stood and waited, an unmovable object. Defeated, she rose. She followed him, the walk down the short hallway feeling like a mile. He made her stand in the doorway as he used the toilet. Then he turned, his face a mask of casual instruction. You are going to pick up the seat, he said. What? Pick it up, for me. A good woman takes care of her man. Prove you are a good woman. It was absurd. It was grotesque. It was a humiliation so small and so total that she felt something inside her crack. Her hands, trembling, reached out and did as he said. She was following him. She was picking up the seat. She was a dog he was training. Good girl, he said, patting her head. The casual, condescending touch made her want to vomit. See. You just need to be reminded of your purpose. He herded her back to the main room, but the humiliation had not satisfied him. It had only opened the door to something else. He was bored. He needed a new stimulus. You're still thinking about him, aren't you? He said, his voice changing, taking on a new, darker texture. Mark. Michael. All of them. All the ones from before. You think I don't know. That's not true, she whispered, her body aching with exhaustion and fear. You're lying, he roared, and this time the violence was not a threat. It was an action. He grabbed her. He was so strong. He lifted her, and she was powerless. He slammed her back, her head connected with the hard edge of a cabinet. A flash of white-hot pain, and then a sickening throb. She gasped. The air knocked from her. A sound. Upstairs. A floorboard. Leo. Her blood ran cold. He was home. He was in his room. He must have heard. She had been trying so hard to be quiet, to contain this, to protect him from this. Eric heard it too. He froze, his head tilted. He smiled, a terrible, thin smile. He's not coming to save you, Eric whispered, his mouth next to her ear. He knows better. He's a smart boy. He knows who is in charge. He knows what happens when you challenge me. The thought of Leo, trapped and terrified upstairs, listening to this, shattered her. She began to cry, silent, agonizing tears. Oh, no, Eric said, his voice full of false sympathy. Don't cry, don't do that. He put his hands on her. Not on her throat, on her mouth and nose. He was not just pushing, he was constricting, he was suffocating. Shh, he whispered, as she began to panic, her hands clawing at his wrists. You just need to be quiet. You need to be still. She could not breathe. She was underwater. The world was narrowing, growing dark. This was it. This was how it ended. In the absolute, terrifying dark, his face a shadow over hers, his hands the things that were ending her. Desperation gave her a final, insane burst of energy. She stopped fighting his hands, and instead forced her arms around him, a grotesque imitation of a hug. I love you, she choked out. The words almost impossible, pushing past the pressure. Eric, baby, please. I love you. Stop. Please. This is enough. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words were poison in her mouth, but they were the only key she had. He froze. He was still for a long, agonizing second. Then, he let go. She collapsed, falling forward, gasping, pulling in air that felt like fire and sandpaper. She was on her hands and knees, her body heaving, the world spinning. He did not help her, he just watched her. He sat on the sofa, breathing normally. He was not even winded. He waited until her gasping subsided into ragged, trembling breaths. How does it feel? He asked. His voice was not angry. It was calm. It was curious. To be so close, to know that I am the only reason you are still breathing. You were scared. I saw it. That's good. It means you remember who I am. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression one of a philosopher, a teacher. You know what happens to women like you out there, Veronica, he murmured. Women who are ungrateful. Women who don't have a strong man to take care of them. They get used up. Other men, they are not nice like me. They see something pretty, something they want, and they take it. In all the ways they can. He leaned in, his voice dropping, a vile, suggestive poison. Maybe I am too good to you. Maybe you have forgotten what out there is really like. Maybe I should just open the door and let you go. Watch them tear you apart. Or maybe I should just show you what a real man does to protect his investment. What I have to do to remind you of what and who you belong to. The threat, unspoken and enormous, filled the room. It was not about ending her life. It was about owning it. It was about the things he could do, the violations he could inflict, long before he ever let her die. The night was not over. It was, she realized with a fresh, cold wave of dread, just beginning. The night did not end. It merely surrendered, inch by agonizing inch, to a change in the quality of the darkness. The hours after his final, chilling monologue had been a new kind of torment. He did not leave her. He did not sleep. He sat and watched her, as a man might watch a new, volatile possession, daring it to move. He had forced her to sit on the floor, while he took the comfortable chair. It was a physical demonstration of their new-old dynamic. He was the master. She was the thing on the floor. His rage had finally burned itself out, leaving behind the terrifying, clinging embers of his affection. He spoke to her in soft, murmuring tones, telling her how much he was doing to protect her, how she made him act this way with her defiance, how much better it would be now that she understood. It was a performance of love, and it was the most terrifying part of all. She was exhausted. Her head throbbed where it had connected with the cabinet. Her throat was raw, and a deep, violated soreness had settled into her body from his forgiveness. Then she heard it. A single, clear note piercing the stale air of the room. A bird. The first one of the morning. The sound was a jolt of pure, undiluted electricity. It cut through the fog of pain, exhaustion, and fear. The outside world still existed. And if it was morning, that meant Leo. The thought was so sharp, so clear, it almost made her gasp. Leo, his vocational training program, it was the one, single part of their lives that Eric had not yet managed to sever. He allowed Leo to go. In fact, he insisted on it, because it made him look like a generous, supportive father. It was a part of Eric's own performance for the outside world. Leo had to leave the house. He was the vector. He was the only way out. She, who had been a frozen, passive object for hours, became a mind in frantic, calculated motion. She was a general planning, a campaign in the span of seconds. She needed to get a message to him. A message he could take out of this house. But how? Eric was still there, his breathing heavy. His long, looping monologue had finally tapered off. His energy was spent. His eyes were closed, his head tilted against the back of the chair. He was not truly asleep, she knew. He was dozing. He was a dragon, resting on his hoard, and any sudden movement would wake him. She waited. She counted seconds. She forced her breathing to be slow, to sound like the breathing of a broken, sleeping thing. Eric's breath hitched, then deepened into a near snore. Now, she could not just get up. The plan was useless if she did not have the message. She had nothing. He had her phone, her wallet, herself. She tested the air. "Eric," she whispered. No response. Just the heavy, rhythmic breathing. She pushed herself up, slowly, from the floor. Each movement was a protest of sore muscles and bruised bones. She rose to her feet. He did not stir. She needed to go to the bathroom. The thought filled her with a new terror. Would he wake? Would he insist on following her, even now? She took one step, then another. The floorboards were silent. She was a ghost in her own home. She reached the hallway. She looked back. He was still. She slipped into the small guest bathroom and, with a hand that trembled so violently she could barely control it, she turned the small lock on the knob. The click sounded, to her, like a thunderclap. She froze, her ear pressed to the door, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought he must hear it. Nothing. No movement from the other room. Only his breathing. She was alone. She had, perhaps, 2 minutes. 3. She tore at the small, empty room. She needed paper. She needed a pen. She opened the cabinet, nothing but towels and soap. She pulled open the drawer, a tangle of old hair ties, a few loose pills she did not recognize, and, yes, a single receipt crumpled into a ball from a gas station weeks ago. It was flimsy, but it was paper. Now, what to write with? There was no pen. She frantically dug in the drawer again. Her fingers brushed something. An old eyeliner pencil, the cap missing, the tip blunt and waxy. She grabbed the receipt, smoothed it against the wall. She began to write, her hand shaking. The pencil was dry. It barely made a mark. She licked her thumb and rubbed the tip, desperate. It was a faint gray, but it was visible. What words? She had so few. I am in danger. No, too vague. He has me. Call police. Please. She stared at it. It was not enough. Leo was terrified of his father. He might panic. He might throw it away, too scared. She turned the receipt over. She wrote again, pressing as hard as she dared without tearing the paper. Give this to your driver. Or a teacher. Do not let him see. Do not come back. I love you. It was done. Now where to hide it? Not her pocket. He might search her. He might decide to forgive her again, and his hands would find it. Her shoe. She was wearing the same slip-on shoes from the day before. She fumbled, her fingers clumsy with haste. She folded the small, precious piece of paper into a tiny, tight square. She jammed it deep into the toe of her left shoe, pushing it down until it was completely hidden, a small, hard lump against her toes. It was done. She flushed the toilet, a cover for the sound of the unlocking mechanism. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She had to go back. She had to be the broken thing again. She opened the door. He was awake. His eyes were open. They were fixed on her, cold and assessing. You were gone a long time, he said, his voice flat. Her heart stopped. She forced her body to sag, to look defeated, not defiant. I was sick, she whispered, and she did not have to fake the tremor in her voice. He stared at her, a long, calculating look. Then he nodded, satisfied. Good, he said. You're learning. She sat back down on the floor, her body rigid, her left foot tucked under her. Now, she just had to wait for the dawn. She just had to wait for Leo. The silence of the house became thinner, poisoned by the first, faint sounds of the world outside. A distant engine, the shift in the quality of the air. Morning was no longer a promise, it was an inevitability. A floorboard creaked above them. Eric's head, which had been resting against the back of the chair, snapped up. His eyes were instantly awake, instantly sharp. He was not a man who had been dozing, he was a man who had been waiting. He looked at Veronica on the floor, and a slow, terrible smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a zookeeper, pleased that the animal was still in its cage. It is time, he said, his voice abnormally bright. Time for the day to start. We must get Leo ready for his program. He pushed himself from the chair, stretching his arms, his body showing no sign of the night's long, hateful vigil. He was energized. He was in control. Veronica pushed herself up. Her body was a map of new aches, but the adrenaline from her desperate plan was a fire under her skin. The small, hard lump in her shoe was her only reality. Yes, Eric, she said, her voice a practiced, broken-sounding husk. Leo, I'll get his breakfast. No, Eric said, his voice a steel trap of kindness. You will not. You have done enough. You will sit. I will make the coffee. I will be the provider. It is what I do. He was performing, but for whom? For himself. For her. Footsteps descended the stairs. Each step was a hammer blow on Veronica's nerves. Leo appeared. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, as if there were an invisible barrier he was afraid to cross. He was 18, but he looked like a child, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the floor in front of him. He did not look at her. He could not. His gaze was fixed, as it always was, on his father. Good morning, sir, Leo said. His voice was rough, barely a sound. Leo, my boy. Eric's voice was a boom of false paternal warmth. You slept well, I hope. Your mother and I. We were just staying up, talking. You know how it is. So much to discuss. The lie hung in the air, thick and vile. Leo nodded, a jerky, puppet-like motion. Yes, sir. Good, good, Eric said, turning his back to them, moving toward the kitchen. Now, coffee. Veronica, you can make yourself useful. Get his lunch. Just a sandwich. Do not try to do anything more complicated. You know what happens when you try. She stood up. The movement was agonizing. Her left foot, the one with the note, felt heavy, as if it were weighted with iron. She moved to the counter, her back to Eric, her body screaming. She was aware of Leo, a few feet away, packing his bag, his movements small and terrified. She took out the bread. Her hands were shaking. She could not stop them. "You seem nervous, Veronica," Eric said from behind her. He had not moved. He was watching her. Of course he was. I am just tired," she whispered. "We are all tired," he said. He turned to his son. "Leo, you have your books, your papers. You know I like you to be prepared." "Yes, sir, it is all here." "Good." Eric's voice was still light, still playful, but the lightness was a lie. "You know, you look a little stressed, son. I hope you are not letting things worry you. You know I will handle everything. Let me see your bag." Veronica's heart stopped. She turned, her hand gripping the bread knife. "Eric," she said, her voice too sharp. "What?" he said, his eyes still on his son, a cold smile playing on his lips. "I am just being a good father, making sure my son is not burdened." "Open it." Leo fumbled with the zipper, his own hands shaking. Eric's gaze was intense, a physical force. He was playing, but it was a search. It was an interrogation. He was reminding Leo that nothing was private, that he owned every pocket, every thought. "What is this?" Eric asked, pulling a small black notebook from the main pocket. "More secrets?" "It is." "It is for my class," Leo stammers, his face pale. "I am sure it is." Eric tossed it back. "Make sure you stay focused. I am very proud of you." This was it. This was her only chance. He was distracted. His focus on Leo, his guard down in his own game of intimidation. "Eric," Veronica said, her voice a reedy, pathetic thing. She took a step toward him, holding the coffee pot she had just filled with water. You did not take this. You said you wanted coffee." She was offering it to him. She was moving into his space. "I am busy, Veronica," he said, annoyed, turning from his son to her. "Please," she said, and she tripped. It was not a graceful stumble. It was a lurch, her body clumsy with feigned exhaustion. Her arm knocked against the counter. The coffee pot did not fall, but it tilted, a wave of cold water splashing out. It hit the floor. It hit his shoes. "Damn it," he roared, the mask of the good father vanishing in an instant of pure, unfiltered rage. He jumped back. "You stupid! Look at this. You are useless. You cannot do one thing." He was distracted. His fury was total. He was focused on the water, on his wet shoes, on her failure. His back was to his son. This was the moment. It was not even a second. It was the space between heartbeats. As he turned, snarling, Veronica was already moving. Her hand, which had been bracing her in her fall, had slipped into her shoe. The tiny, wadded-up receipt was in her palm. She shoved the sandwich, wrapped in paper, at Leo. "Here," she said, her voice loud, trembling, a part of the performance of her panic. "Your lunch." Her other hand, the one with the note, shot out. She did not just give it to him. She grabbed his hand, his cold, clammy hand, and she pushed it. She jammed the small, hard square of paper into his palm, her fingernails digging into his skin, a silent, painful scream. "Take it." Their eyes locked. His face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending terror. He looked from her eyes, wild and pleading, down to his own hand, which she was still gripping. He felt it. He understood. She saw the exact moment the understanding landed. His eyes widened, and then, a new kind of fear, the fear of complicity, the fear of this terrible new responsibility, flooded his face. "What are you two staring at?" Eric snarled, ripping a towel from the holder, his fury still white-hot. "Are you deaf? I am wet. And you," he pointed the towel at Leo, "get out, now. You will be late. I will not have you embarrassing me." Leo's hand, the one holding the note, clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles were white. He did not nod. He did not speak. He just moved. He shoved his fist deep into the pocket of his trousers. He grabbed his bag. He did not look at her again. He could not. "Yes, sir," he whispered, his voice a cracked and broken thing. He walked to the front door. He opened it. He stepped through. The door clicked shut. The sound was a final, terrible period. The note was gone. Leo was gone. Veronica was on her hands and knees, with a cloth in her hand, the puddle of water spreading on the floor. She was alone in the house with Eric. The door clicked shut. The sound was an explosion in Leo's ears, a final severing sound that separated him from everything he had ever known. He was outside. He was on his own. His hand was a clenched fist, jammed so deep into his pocket that his knuckles ached. The note was inside, a tiny, hard-edged lump that felt impossibly large, impossibly heavy. It felt hot, as if it were burning a hole through the fabric and into his skin. He could still feel her fingernails digging into his palm, a desperate, silent message. Go. Do not fail. He did not run. Running was suspicious. Running would attract attention. His father was watching. He knew, with an absolute, primal certainty, that his father was standing just inside the house, parted curtains, his eyes a physical weight on Leo's back. Any sudden movement, any deviation from the script, and the door would open. He would be called back. And then, Leo did not allow his mind to go there. He just walked. Left foot, right foot. The simple, mechanical act of placing one foot in front of the other was the most difficult physical task of his entire life. His body was screaming at him to turn back, to throw the note away, to go back to the familiar, suffocating terror he understood. This new terror, the terror of action, of defiance, was a wild, untamed thing, and it threatened to swallow him whole. He could feel the waxy, faint letters on the crumpled paper through his pocket. Call police. Give this to your driver. The walk to the bus stop was 2 blocks. It felt like 200 miles. With every step, he played out the catastrophe. He would trip, and the note would fall out. His father would appear behind him, his hand clamping on his shoulder. The police would come, and his father would charm them, would convince them she was the crazy one, and then, when they left, the real punishment would begin. He was 18 years old. He was, by law, an adult. He was, in reality, a prisoner, and he had just stolen the key to his cell, and he was terrified that the key itself was a bomb. He reached the corner, the bus stop. He was alone. He leaned against the post, trying to look casual, trying to look bored, a young man on his way to his program. His heart was a frantic bird, beating itself against the cage of his ribs. He saw it. The large, white bus, turning the corner. It was a relief so profound it was almost a new kind of pain. It was real. It was coming. This was the point of no return. The bus hissed to a stop. The doors folded open. He stepped on. His fist was still clenched. He did not look at the driver. He could not. He moved past her, his head down, and slid into the first seat, the one right behind her, facing inward. He did not go to his usual spot in the back. He needed to be close. The driver was Sarah. She was a woman in her 40s, her hair pulled back in a tight, sensible way. She had driven this route for 2 years. She had seen Leo every single weekday. She knew his name. She knew he was quiet. "Morning, Leo," she said, her voice casual, not even looking at him, checking her mirror. He tried to answer. A sound came out, a strangled, high-pitched noise like a stepped-on animal. He coughed, covering it. Sarah glanced at him, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "You all right, son? You sound like you swallowed a bug." He just nodded, his face hot with shame. He turned his face away, toward the window, pretending to look out. The bus pulled away. There were other people on the bus. 2 other men and a woman, all older, all on their way to the same vocational center. They were talking quietly among themselves. Leo could not do it here. He could not. He could not stand up and show her the note in front of them. What if they knew his father? What if they said something? He sat, frozen, his hand still in his pocket, clutching the note. The bus stopped and started. He was failing. He was a coward. He was going to ride the whole way, and then what? He would have to go to the class. He would have to go home, and the note would still be in his pocket, a damp, useless ball of paper. And Veronica. He thought of her face when she shoved it into his hand. That wild, desperate, pleading look. He had to do it. The bus was pulling into the final stop, the one for the center. The other 3 passengers stood up, gathering their bags. All right, folks, Sarah's voice called out. Have a good one. They began to file off. Leo stood up, too. He was shaking. His legs felt like they were full of wet sand. He followed them to the front of the bus. 1, 2, 3. They stepped off. Leo was at the front. He was at the steps. Sarah was looking down, writing something on a clipboard. Have a good one, Leo, she said, her voice distracted. He did not move. She finished writing. She looked up. He was still standing there. Leo, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. He could not speak. His throat was closed. His entire life, he had been trained to be silent. His father's voice was in his head. Do not speak. Do not make a sound. Do not draw attention. And here, in the most important moment, his voice had obeyed. It had abandoned him. Son? Sarah asked, her voice changing, a note of concern entering it. He gave up on words. Words were useless. He pulled his hand from his pocket. It was shaking violently. He unclenched his fingers one by one. The note was there. It was a tiny, pathetic, damp square of paper. He did not hand it to her. He did not have the strength. He just opened his hand. Sarah's eyes flickered from his face, pale and slick with sweat, down to his open, trembling palm. She saw the note. She did not ask him what it was. She did not laugh. She looked back at his eyes, and she must have seen the pure, primal terror there. She reached out, her fingers professional and quick, and she plucked the tiny, wadded-up piece of paper from his hand. She unfolded it. It was tiny. The writing was faint, waxy, and desperate. She read it. Her expression did not change, not at first. She was just a woman reading a note. She read it a second time. Then, she looked at him, really looked at him. The casual, everyday mask of bus driver fell away. Her face hardened. Her eyes became sharp, clear, and focused. She was not seeing a quiet kid anymore. She was seeing a message. She was seeing a victim. Okay, she said. Her voice was not the voice he knew. It was calm. It was deep. It was the voice of someone taking control. She looked out the bus window, her gaze sweeping the area. Then she reached, not for her radio, but for her personal cell phone, tucked into a holder on the dash. She pulled the large, yellow lever that engaged the parking brake. The hiss of the air was the loudest sound he had ever heard. She pulled the bus to the side of the road, away from the stop. She looked at him one more time. You did the right thing, Leo. You did a very brave thing. I want you to sit right back down in that seat. Do not get off the bus. You understand me. He nodded, a single jerky movement. She turned away from him. She dialed. He heard the 3 distinct tones. Then her voice, clear and strong, cutting through the silence of the bus. 911. What is your emergency? Yes, hi. I am a bus driver, and one of my students has just passed me a note. It says his mother needs help. It says his dad is hurting her. The click of the front door was the loudest sound Veronica had ever heard. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock, the sound of a trap being set, the sound of an escape route being sealed. She was alone with him. She was still on her hands and knees, the damp cloth in her hand, the small puddle of water mocking her. Leo was gone. The note was gone. She had fired her only arrow into the darkness, and now she had no idea if it had hit a target or simply fallen, useless, to the ground. That's better. Eric's voice came from above her. She looked up. He was not angry about the water anymore. He was smiling. It was a thin, proprietary smile. He was pleased. He was pleased that she was on her knees. He was pleased that she was cleaning up his mess, a mess she had created. You see, he said, his voice soft, reasonable, as if he were explaining a simple concept to a child. You see how much easier life is when you just do what you are told, when you just accept your place, all that drama last night. It was so unnecessary, Veronica. You just make things difficult for yourself and for me. He nuded her with his foot, not a kick. A gentle, condescending nudge, the way one might move a sleeping animal. Get up, finish cleaning this, and then you will make me coffee. The right way this time. She rose, her body an engine of pure, unadulterated terror. She was on autopilot. Her hands, which had been so clumsy in her feigned accident, were now numb. She cleaned the water, She walked to the kitchen. She could feel his eyes on her back with every step. He was not following her. He did not need to. He had taken her keys, her phone, herself. The house was a cage, and he was the only one with the key. The next hour was a new circle of hell. It was the hell of forced normalcy. She made the coffee. Her hands shook so badly that the grounds spilled onto the counter. She frantically wiped them away, terrified he would see, terrified it would be another trigger. He sat at the table, watching her, a king on his throne. He talked. He talked about his work. He talked about his colleagues, about how stupid Mark was, about how he, Eric, was the only one who truly understood the business. And then he talked about Leo. "He is a good boy," Eric said, sipping his coffee. "But he is weak, like his mother. He needs a firm hand. He needs my guidance. You are too soft on him. You fill his head with soft ideas. It is not healthy. This program will be good for him. It will teach him discipline." Veronica said nothing. She just stood, her back against the counter, her hands gripping the cold edge so hard her knuckles were white. She was a statue. "Are you not going to speak?" he asked, his voice still light. "Have you finally learned? Have I finally cured you of your need to argue?" She could not form words. Her entire being, every cell, every nerve ending, was vibrating. It was the waiting, the not knowing. Was Leo safe? Did he give her the note? Did he throw it away? Was he, at this very moment in a class, pretending everything was fine? Had she just sacrificed her last, desperate chance? Had she sent him out, only to be pulled back in, and to bring the full, final weight of Eric's rage down on them both? "I said," Eric's voice repeated, a sharp edge entering it. "Are you not going to speak?" She forced a sound from her raw throat. "Yes, Eric, you are right. Discipline is good." He smiled. "Good girl, you see. We can have a good life. You just have to listen." He was remaking the world. He was rewriting the history of the last 12 hours. The violence, the suffocation, the threats, in his mind. They were a necessary corrective procedure. A surgery he had performed to save her from her own sickness. And now, the patient was cured. She felt a wave of nausea so profound she almost doubled over. And then, she heard it. It was not a bird. It was not a distant car. It was a sound that did not belong to their quiet, dead-end street. It was the sound of heavy, official purpose. A car door. Slamming, hard. Eric, in the middle of a sentence about his own importance, paused. What in the world? Veronica's heart stopped. It did not beat. It simply ceased, frozen, in her chest. Then, the pounding. It was not a knock. It was not a polite inquiry. It was a heavy, flat, percussive boom. A fist on their front door. It was a sound that vibrated through the floor. A sound that shook the very foundation of the house. Boom, boom, boom. Eric's face, which had been a mask of smug control, instantly changed. The blood drained from it. But it was not fear she saw. It was not guilt. It was pure, unadulterated, narcissistic rage. "Who in the hell," he whispered, his voice a low, venomous thing, "dares to do that to my house?" He stood up. He threw his coffee cup onto the table. It shattered, brown liquid and ceramic shards exploding across the wood. He did not even flinch. Boom, boom, boom. "Police!" a voice shouted. A man's voice, deep and non-negotiable. "Open the door. Now." Police. The word was real. It was not a dream. It was not a desperate fantasy. It was real, and it was on the other side of her front door. Eric turned to her. His eyes were not the eyes of a lover or a savior or a disappointed husband. They were the eyes of a snake, cold and black and dead, finding the rat in its cage. "You," he hissed. The word was an accusation, an execution, a final, terrible understanding. "What did you do?" He started to move. Not toward her. Toward the door. He was going to handle this. He was going to charm them, to lie to them, to turn them away. He was going to tell them she was crazy. And Veronica knew, with a certainty that was as cold and hard as the floor under her feet, that he could do it. He was good enough. He was believable. As his hand reached for the doorknob, that was when she moved. It was not a plan. It was an animal instinct. It was a scream that had no sound. While his focus, his rage, his entire being was directed at the front of the house, at the breach of his castle walls, she turned. She ran. She ran, her numb feet pounding on the floor, past the kitchen, toward the back of the house. She did not grab a thing. She did not think. She just fled. She reached the back door. Her hands, which had been useless and shaking, were now like claws. She fumbled with the deadbolt, her breath tearing at her raw throat. The lock clicked. She tore the door open. She fell, rather than ran, out onto the small back step, into the cold, bright, impossible air of the morning. It was the first time she had breathed her own air in more than 12 hours. A man was there. He was in a uniform. He had his hand on his side. He was rounding the corner of the house. He saw her. He stopped. His face was a mask of professional concern. "Ma'am," he said. Veronica opened her mouth. She was safe. She was out, and the only sound that came out was a long, terrible wail, the sound of a thing that had been broken, finally letting go. The wail tore from her throat, a sound she did not recognize as her own. The officer in front of her, his face a mask of professional calm, did not flinch. He just spoke, his voice steady. "Ma'am, I am Officer Diaz. You are safe. We are here. Can you tell me what is happening?" She gasped, the air burning her lungs. "In the house." "Your husband?" She nodded, a frantic bird-like motion. "Officer, in here!" a voice shouted from the front. "Ma'am, I need you to walk with me to the car. You are safe now." He gently, firmly guided her, his body shielding her from the house, from the open door she had just fled. She was placed in the back of a patrol car. The door shut, and the sound of the lock clicking was not a trap. It was a release. She sat, trembling, as a new officer, a woman with kind, tired eyes, sat in the front seat, facing her. "My name is Officer Chen," she said, her voice soft. "We need to know what happened. To help you." The words began to pour out of Veronica. They were not in order. They were a torrent of fragments, of horrors. The phone, just Sarah. He took it. "My keys. He. Last night. The cabinet. My head." She touched the throbbing spot, wincing. "He made me." "The bathroom," he said. "He said I was his investment." "Ma'am, did he put his hands on you?" Veronica looked at her, her eyes wide with the memory. He said I needed to be quiet. I couldn't breathe. I was underwater. He was, his hands. I told him I loved him. It was the only key. The officer's face tightened, but her voice remained calm. "He strangled you." Veronica just nodded, the tears finally coming, hot and silent. I thought Leo is safe," the officer said, her voice firm. "His bus driver is with him. He did a very brave thing. You both did." Meanwhile, inside the house, a different kind of performance was beginning. Two officers, their faces grim, had Eric in the center of his living room, his hands cuffed behind him. "You have no right," Eric was saying, his voice not loud, but shaking with a terrible, controlled fury. "This is my home. You have terrified my partner. She is sick. She is not well." "She seems terrified of you, sir," the senior officer said, his voice flat, "because she's having an episode. I am the only one. Who can? Eric's voice hitched. His breathing, which had been controlled, suddenly became ragged, a desperate, gasping sound. His eyes rolled. I can't. My chest." He wheezed, his knees buckling. He collapsed onto the floor, a boneless, heavy weight. "I need help. My medication." The officers looked at each other, their faces a mixture of skepticism and procedural obligation. "This is not normal," Eric gasped from the floor, his eyes squeezed shut, a single tear of pain rolling down his temple. "It's my PTSD, my anxiety. I can't breathe." "Is this normal for him?" the senior officer asked his partner. "It is a performance, sir," the partner replied, his voice low. "Maybe," the senior officer said, sighing, "but we have to follow protocol. Call the paramedics." Get him checked out. I want him medically cleared before he sets one foot in a cell. I do not want this, to be his excuse. Eric was strapped to a gurney. The paramedics were efficient, their movements quick and impersonal. What is the problem, sir? One of them asked, shining a light into Eric's eyes. My heart. Eric gasped, his hand, now uncuffed, clutching at his chest. I have anxiety. I have bipolar. I need help. He is wanting to go, the officer muttered to the paramedic. He is very eager. The paramedic just nodded. Sir, your oxygen is at 98%. Your heart rate is a little elevated, but nothing crazy. You are not having a heart attack. But I do not feel good, Eric insisted, his voice a pathetic whine. The mask of the strong man was gone, replaced by the mask of the sick man. He thought the hospital was a sanctuary. He thought it was a delay. He thought he could use the system as he had always used her. He was taken to the hospital. He was wheeled through the bright, sterile hallways. He was put in a room. He waited. He waited for a very long time. The panic he was feeling was now real. But it was not anxiety. It was the cold, creeping dread of losing control. Finally, a doctor, a tired-looking woman, entered his room. She held a chart. Well, Mr. Eric, she said, her voice brisk, we have run the tests. Your heart is fine. Your blood work is fine. Medically, you are in perfect health. But you are medically cleared, she said, turning to leave. You are free to go. Eric smiled, a small, weak smile. He had done it. They were letting him go. He just had to get home, to fix this, to find Veronica, to explain, too. The door opened. It was not the doctor. It was the officer from his house, the senior one. And he was holding a set of handcuffs. You are free to go, the officer said, his voice a cold echo of the doctor's. With me. You are under arrest. The sick man act evaporated. The weakness, the gasping, the fear, it vanished in an instant. Eric's face, which had been a mask of pathetic suffering, hardened into something else. It was the cold, flat, reptilian stillness Veronica knew so well. For what? He asked, his voice no longer weak, but a low, dangerous growl. For everything, the officer said, applying the cuffs. The click of the metal was loud in the sterile room. Your performance is over. The room was small, and there was nothing in it but a table and 3 chairs. Eric sat in one, his hands cuffed to the table. The man who sat across from him was not one of the uniformed officers. This man wore a suit that needed ironing. He looked tired. He looked patient. My name is Detective Miller, the man said. He did not sound angry. He sounded bored. And I am here to get your side of the story. So, tell me, what happened last night? Eric looked at him. He said nothing. Silence was a weapon he had used for years. It was a tool of control. Miller waited. He did not tap his pen. He did not check his watch. He just sat, breathing, and waited. Finally, the silence, which was usually Eric's ally, became his enemy. It was pressing in on him. I do not feel good, Eric said, his voice a low rasp. I need my medication. I am sick. We know, Miller said, his voice flat. We have seen the show. The hospital cleared you. So, let us try again. What happened last night? Nothing, Eric said. Nothing happened. We had a disagreement. Veronica. She is not stable. She gets ideas. She is paranoid. I was trying to help her. And then your men. They broke down my door. They treated me like a criminal. They treated you like a man who just had the police called on him, Miller said, his voice still calm. She says you would not let her leave. She was not well. I was protecting her. From herself, she says you took her phone, her keys, her wallet. To keep her safe, Eric insisted, his voice rising, the first crack in his mask. She was a threat to herself. She says you hit her. She says you slammed her head into a cabinet. Never. I would never. She says you put your hands on her throat. She says you strangled her. She says you told her how you were the only reason she was breathing. Eric stopped. He stared at Miller. His face was blank. What am I being charged with? He finally asked, his voice small. I am not there yet, Miller said. I am investigating. This is your chance, Eric, your one and only chance to tell me your side, to show me any remorse, to be a human being. Eric stared at the table. He was calculating. He was building his new story. Then he looked up. His eyes were cold. I did not do nothing, he said. Is that your official statement? Miller asked. I did not do nothing, bro, Eric repeated, leaning back, the entitlement, the arrogance, returning. She is a liar. She is sick. You have got nothing. Okay, Detective Miller said. He stood up. I think we are done here. That is it, Eric asked, confused. He thought there would be more. A fight? A negotiation? That is it, Miller said. You have told me everything I need to know. He left the room, leaving Eric cuffed to the table, the cold, hard, reptilian mask now his only face. Detective Miller was not done. He knew he had the man, but he did not have the story. Not all of it. He needed to build a wall so high and so thick that no jury, no judge, no lawyer could find a crack in it. He went back to the original officer's report. He found the fragment from Veronica's initial panicked testimony. His ex-girlfriend, he has done this before. He started digging. It was not hard to find. A name. Maria. A woman who had filed for a restraining order against Eric 3 years ago, only to drop it, suddenly, 1 week later. Mila found her. She was not happy to see him. She was terrified. I have nothing to say, she said, her hands shaking, not even letting him into her small apartment. That was a long time ago. It was a mistake. Was it a mistake, Maria? Miller asked, his voice gentle. Or were you scared? Because there is another woman. Her name is Veronica. And he did it to her too. He hurt her. Badly. And she was brave enough to get help. Maria looked at him, her eyes wide with a familiar haunted terror. He told me, she whispered, her voice barely audible, that I was lucky. He told me he was saving me. He gave me a place to live. He handled my problems. Just like he did with her, did not he? Miller just nodded. He did not hit me. Not at first. He owned me. He took my phone. He told me who I could see. He liked to remind me that I belonged to him. In the dark. He had ways to remind me. Vile ways. Why did you drop the charges, Maria? Miller asked. Her face crumpled. He had things on me, pictures from before I met him. A stupid mistake I made when I was younger. He told me he was protecting them for me, but when I filed the paper, he just smiled. He said, Are you sure you want everyone to see what you really are? Are you sure you want to lose everything? She was weeping now, the old, cold fear fresh again. He did not just control me, detective, she said, looking up, her eyes fierce. He blackmailed me. He made me a prisoner with my own past. Is she okay? This new one? Veronica. She is safe, Miller said, and so are you, Maria. He is not getting out this time. Miller was a man who did not like loose ends. He had the pattern. He had the current crime. But he did not have the why. He looked at Eric's claims. PTSD, bipolar, anxiety. He pulled the medical records. They were thin. A few prescriptions for anxiety, but nothing serious. The claims were, as he suspected, a shield. But why claim PTSD? There had to be a source. He dug into the sealed archives, the juvenile records, the things that were supposed to stay buried, and he found it. He found the source. When Eric was 16 years old, there was a fire. A terrible, tragic fire at his family home. His parents, both of them, had perished. But Eric had survived. He had heroically escaped. He had been found on the lawn, coughing, covered in soot, a single, tragic survivor. He was the boy who had lost everything. Miller read the old file, his blood turning to ice. He read the original fire investigator's report. The fire had started in the parents' bedroom. An electrical fault, the final report said. But the first investigator on the scene, a man who was now long retired, had noted an anomaly. The parents' bedroom door. It had been locked. From the outside, the investigator had suspicions. But the evidence was burned. And Eric was a 16-year-old orphan, a victim of a terrible tragedy. Who would dare to suggest something else? The case was closed. Miller sat back in his chair. He finally understood. Eric was not a man suffering from trauma. He was a man who had inflicted it. He was a man who had learned, at a very young age, how to be the victim, how to perform, how to use a tragedy as both a shield and a source of power. The PTSD was not a defense. It was a trophy. He was not just an abuser. He was not just a controller. He was a monster who had been practicing his entire life. The House of Horrors was not a new construction. It was just a new location. Veronica was in a small, clean, sterile room at a victims advocacy center. She had a cup of tea in her hands. She had not let go of it for an hour. It was cold. Her phone, a temporary one provided by the advocate, rang. She jumped, spilling the tea on herself. "It is okay," the advocate said, her voice calm. "It is just a phone. You answer it." Veronica looked at the number. It was Detective Miller. She answered, her hand trembling. "Hello, Veronica, this is Detective Miller. I just wanted to update you. Is he getting out?" She whispered. The old, programmed fear instantly returning. "No, ma'am," Miller's voice was firm. "He is not getting out. I wanted to let you know. We are charging him. We are charging him with 3 felonies. Aggravated battery on a household member. 2 of them. 2 of them are for the strangulation. We are also charging him with battery and deprivation of property. He is being held without bond." The words, felonies, strangulation, no bond. She should have felt relief. She should have felt joy. Instead, she just felt hollow. "Veronica," Miller's voice asked, after a long silence. I, she started, and the words that came out were not her own. They were the words of the woman he had trained, the woman he had built. I do not know how to say this, but, there will not be any way. He can see his kid." The words hung in the air. The advocate in the room with her, who had heard her side, just closed her eyes, her face a mask of profound sadness. There was a silence on the phone. Miller, who now knew about the fire, who knew about Maria, who knew what Eric was not surprised. "Veronica," he said, and his voice was not the voice of a cop. It was the voice of a man. That is not your concern. That is not your burden to carry anymore. The way you all had it. It did not work. He exposed Leo to something terrible. Child and Family Services will be in contact, just to check on Leo, to make sure he has support. He is a victim in this, too." He paused. "This is not your fault, none of it. And it is not your job to worry about him." Veronica was silent, the tears rolling down her face. I know," she whispered, her voice finally her own. "I know. I should have. I should have pressed charges. The first time he sent me to the hospital. But I felt bad." "You do not have to feel bad anymore, Veronica," Miller said. This time, it is not up to you. The state is pursuing this. You do not have to do anything but heal." "Thank you," she whispered, and she meant it. "Thank you." It was several months later. The air was different. The seasons had changed. The apartment was small. The furniture was second-hand, but it was theirs. Veronica sat at a small table, a cup of coffee in her hand. It was hot. She watched the steam rise, her own hand, steady, holding the mug. In the other room, she could hear music. It was not loud, but it was there. Leo was in his room, listening to music. An act so simple, so normal, it felt like a miracle. An act that would have been a punishable offense in the old house. He was in counseling. She was in counseling. They were working on it. Eric was in jail. He was, as the file had predicted, awaiting his sentencing. He was being held without bond. The wall Miller had built was too high. Maria's testimony, the old fire report, and Veronica's own clear, unwavering words. He was not getting out. The phone rang. Veronica looked at it. It was her new phone, her own phone in her own name. It was an old friend. A woman she had not spoken to in years. A woman Eric had decided was a bad influence. She picked it up. "Hello," she said. She smiled. It was a real smile. Small, tired, but real. Yes, yes, I am here. I would love to. How about next week? She talked for a few minutes. She made plans. She laughed. She hung up. She sat for a moment, just letting the quiet of the apartment settle around her. It was not the cold, heavy, dangerous quiet of the old house. It was just quiet. It was peace. She walked to her small balcony, her coffee in her hand. The sun was just beginning to set. She did not know what the future held. She knew the trial would be hard. She knew the scars were deep, things she could not see, things that would ache on cold days. But she was not a hostage. She was not a possession. She was not a delicate thing, or a sick woman, or an investment. She was Veronica. She took a sip of her coffee. She watched the sun go down, and for the first time in 7 years, she just breathed her own air. Thank you for following this story to its conclusion. It has been a journey into the dark, but also into the light of resilience. I hope this outline and these chapters have given you the framework you needed. The strength of these characters is not in their perfection, but in their survival. Until next time, take care and be well.